Welcome everybody to the show. It is my esteemed pleasure to introduce a special guest tonight, U.S. Army Ranger, U.S. Air Force Pararescue, and host of Forged in Fire, Mr. Wil Willis. Will?
Thank you very much. Former host of Forged in Fire.
Former host of Forged in Fire. But if you watched any of the previous 5 years, I think it ran, this is the guy yelling at the bladesmiths.
Yeah. The guy that started it all. No, I didn't start it all. It's funny is I replaced another guy with great titles and credibility. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So somebody else filmed the pilot, and then they brought me on, and then after they're done with me, they moved on to the next guy. So, it is what it is.
So I do have a question. I'm curious. You're a U.S. Army Ranger. You're in 3rd Bat.
Mm-hmm.
You leave the Army. You go to the Air Force. Become a pararescue, and if the listeners are not familiar with what a PJ is, you need to be, because they are the top of the top for in the Air Force.
Search and rescue and recovery specialist, yeah.
So my question, I think, really is, it comes down to, which is your favorite movie, Black Hawk Down or Last Full Measure?
Man, next question, pass.
Will, do you have one would you have one that's over the two of those?
No, I mean, look, man, when I watch those movies, and some of the players that are involved, and you worked with I showed up to 3rd Ranger Battalion in March after Mogadishu went down, and there was still some stuff. There was still a lot of emotion and stuff going on with it. So, and then to also know some of the players involved, and to know the Army had to change the name of some of the guy, one of the guys, because of his, criminal activity. And, I mean, it was just, I wasn't there, you know what I mean? And I think that's a better question for guys that were there. I watched the movie. Nothing, I knew the guys. That's it. I knew the guys. And even the PJs that were in the movie, I met later when I became a PJ. So you get in two different perspectives. You got the real world versus the fake world. And it's always hard for me to watch any kind of movie about the military, because the first thing you start doing is shooting holes in it. Like, what the fuck ever, man? This is my safety. What the fuck? Come on, nobody says that shit.
Yeah, I tend to do that, and my wife says that I ruin the movies for her sometimes when I do that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, America's got a love-hate relationship with the military. They love the stories that come out of the military, but they hate to know what the fuck is really happening over there. They hate to know that their sons and daughters are shooting the faces off of our enemies. That I don't want to hear about that. But you hear a great story like Mike Murphy in The Last Full Measure, and those guys, and you just the extraordinary nature of it, and you're like, oh, that's great entertainment. Not for those motherfuckers that lived it. You know what I mean? And then to turn it around and turn it into entertainment. I mean, here's the thing: you have the collaboration of the guys, and in a lot of ways it honors the guys and stuff. But for me, I can't. I have a hard time watching it. And not because I experienced all of those things. I'm more into like the fucking Beastmaster, man. That's total fantasy. You know what I mean? Don't we have enough conflict in the real world, man? Let's watch some fucking Star Wars. You know what I mean? Let's just why do we have to relive that trauma over and over and over again? For me, you know what I mean? Like, it was traumatic. Anytime something like that happens in the special operations community, there's a huge ripple effect. And why go through it over and over and over again? I'm more about, a nice slapstick comedy. Yeah. Sorry.
So how did you transition from the military to acting?
Well, it wasn't direct. It was all by accident. I kind of forced gumped my way into it. I answered an email from the Pararescue Association, you know, and then just one thing turned into another, and I just kept saying yes to shit, you know. I just yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And you know, I mean, I was trying to figure out a way to make a living outside of the military. You know, I was like, what am I gonna do when I can't jump out of planes anymore, when I can't shoot guns anymore, when I can't, when all of this stuff goes away and I'm retired like my dad was, and he had to go to picking corn, you know what I mean, for a friend to make some cash until he found a job at Target and stuff like that. Like, you know, what am I gonna do, like, with myself? I said, I've always taken risks. I've always taken risks, you know, whether it was jumping out of planes or helicopters, or getting left in the North Atlantic Ocean by a helicopter that was having a malfunction. You know, there's always been risks involved in everything that I did, but usually it was a life and death risk. What am I really risking by trying something that's outrageous? What am I really risking? And what could be the reward on the backside if I'm good at it, or if I'm successful? I'd always thought about it. You know, I was the guy that memorized all the movie quotes. And people would be like, you know, we're in the field, be like, Willis, come over here, do A Few Good Men, do the end. And I would do it. Willis, it's banner day. We want to hear the Braveheart speech. Come over here, do the Braveheart speech. Do the one. You know, the one. You know, like, I was that guy. I mean, and there are still stories about me kind of doing you know, these antics, you know, and I was always the guy that was out to tell a story, hear a story, entertain you know, other guys, and with stories, you know, create some stories and stuff. So it seemed like a natural step, or a step in that direction seemed natural, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I was a king bullshitter. So, like, why not go to the biggest bullshit place on the planet and get paid for it?
Well, you said you kept saying yes. Didn't they teach you in the military not to say yes to anything? Don't volunteer.
No. I mean, they did. They were like, don't volunteer for anything, but I volunteered for everything. Like, who wants to be the first guy to let the dog attack you at SEER school? Yeah, me, I'll do that. You know what I mean? Like, I was always the guy. I was always down. Like, let's get it on, man. Yeah. You know, yeah.
So you had mentioned, you know, jumping out of planes. Were you Jumpmaster qualified?
Yeah, I was a military freefall jump master.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a jump master as well, and it was very reminiscent to hear you yelling at the bladesmiths the time commands. I was like, no, that motherfucker's a jump master.
Hey,
nobody shouts like that.
And you know what's funny is that I would also sometimes give the calls. You know what I mean? I'd be like 30 seconds, you know, or 1 minute. You know what I mean? I would actually use the hand and arm signals that you would use in military free fall, you know, sometimes. And you know, whether or not it was caught on camera or caught by anybody else, you know,
I recognized the voice, and I was like, nope, that's Jumpmaster right there.
Oh yeah, you got to, yeah, you got to sound off so that everybody can hear you in the bird, at the front of the bird. So yeah, that's how it is, man. If you don't got pipes, you don't have no business being a Jumpmaster. Yeah. Okay.
So how did you so you did the Forge and Fire as a lark, we'll call it, that lasted for 5 seasons, right?
But no, I mean, that wasn't the first show I did. I mean, I did 2 shows for the military channel. One was Special Ops Mission, and the other one was Triggers, Weapons That Changed the World. And that was, you know, about the evolution of guns. Special Ops Mission was about kind of the capabilities of a single special operator against an opposing force. And that was kind of a farce, not a farce, but like, you know, it was my first experience with I guess Hollywood, I guess is what you could call it. This is my first experience with reality TV in the entertainment industry. Triggers was a more traditional hosted show that, you know, I really enjoyed doing. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I probably handled more weapons in 2 years than a lot of guys most people handle in their entire lifetime. I'd say I've had my hands on a more diverse array of weapons than all but maybe a few thousand people in the world. I'd say I'm in the top 1,000 people that have, you know, like, with the number of weapons that I've handled and shot, including like a Swedish leather cannon on U.S. soil. Nobody's ever done that except me that I know of. So, like, I mean, like, there's been some great moments for me. I got to go to the NRA museum and hold a gun that belonged to Jesse James, and that was the curator of the museum's personal gun, you know, in his personal collection. You know, I got to hold a Han Solo's pistol, you know, from Star Wars, because it happened to be on display at the museum when I was there. I got to go over to Sweden and go to the shoot the AT4s and stuff like that, because we were at what is the name of that company? I can't think of it. Was it Saab Dynamic? Not Saab Dynamic. What was it? I don't remember what it was, but they make cars and weapons. But
Saab's into, they're into planes.
Yeah, I think it is Saab Dynamics. In Karlskoga, Sweden. I think it is, where we shot the Carl Gustaf. You know, I got to shoot the Carl Gustaf in Sweden. You know, so I had a lot of really great opportunities, and I did a lot of really fun stuff. And I think the industry, in a lot of ways, you know, has bitten me. You know, it bit me. You know, because those first two shows, the whole time I was filming them, like the first one, I was driving a cab in between episodes. You know, it didn't pay me a lot of money. I was just got out of the military. I was trying to figure things out. And then the second one, I was teaching tactical emergency trauma care as a real full-time job, and then just kind of doing that show during my available time, you know, with the company, and you know, with that production company, and it all worked out really well. And so I guess I took for granted a little bit how easy it was in the beginning, because later on, you know, when things were, or when there was a longer stall or whatever, I had to really kind of reevaluate some things, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
I think everybody that's in that business goes through that, right? They go through that, you know, am I doing the right thing? Yeah.
It's the ebb and flow. It's the up and down. You know, I mean, you know, it's a feast or famine sort of business, or it can be, and that's fine. That's the nature of the beast. And you know, it's all about interpersonal relationships and professionalism and stuff like that, and being able to do your job when you're there and do it well. And I think that a lot of military personnel gravitate to the crew side of things, because it is structured a lot like a military unit. So, you know, in the entertainment industry, it's different than a lot of businesses in a lot of ways, but then there are similarities in a lot of ways, you know. So, but coming from an all military background, I've had a hard time adjusting.
Yeah, most guys do. The one thing I find cathartic is getting on a bike and taking a ride and feeling the wind in my face. It seems like no matter what the hell's going on in the world, no matter how mad I am, I can do an hour. My wife will encourage me sometimes to go take a ride, because she knows it just transforms me. And I know about the classic car bug that you have.
Yeah.
What about the motorcycles, and maybe a favorite bike, favorite route you could share with us?
Okay. I ride a 2004 Harley Davidson Sportster that has a 2012 front end. And it used to be a 2009 front end, and it's just beat the hell, and it's covered in stickers that are peeling off. And you know, I bought it so that I could ride back and forth to San Diego when I was working at Camp Pendleton, or not San Diego, when I was working out of Bonsall at Camp Pendleton. I taught tactical emergency trauma care. So I bought this bike so that I could commute faster. I could split lanes, right? And then it became like, man, how fast can I get home? And, yeah, you know, and you know, I started riding very, very fast and loose on my bike, and it, you know, it's really tucked in. I love that bike. I love that little bike, man. And I laid it down. It's a few times. I've laid it down a few times. Probably when was the last time? Maybe the last time was the fifth time I had laid it down. And somehow I come out of it on the other side, you know, okay. And I'm talking like on the highway speeds. I've come off the bike and just like sailed down the road. but that's my favorite bike. And I just got it out of the shop from a Harley dealership out in Thousand Oaks. They had it for 4 months. For 4 months, they had this bike, and it was killing me. It's sapping my soul. And now it's all cold and icy outside, and I can't even ride it back up the mountain. It's parked at my father-in-law's house, and I miss it. Yeah.
I saw your post on the porch with your little guy, and the snow was coming down, and I thought about you because I'm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And, we had 16 inches of snow the other day. It melted off in 2 days. My wife says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going for a ride." She said, "It's like 20 degrees outside." I said, "But the roads are clear." So
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, man. I will take my bike out when it's cold. So you asked about favorite routes, you know what I mean? And I like driving on mountain roads, you know what I mean? I like the windy roads. I haven't had a chance to ride the Harley up here, and tell you the truth, the Triumph that I have, I don't like it. I don't like how high centered it is. It doesn't ride the best for me. Somebody else might like that. I rode the thing across the country, you know what I mean, with a sissy bar on it, you know what I mean? But I don't personally, you know, like riding it on those roads. I don't feel as comfortable with it as I do with my Harley, because it's a little bit more low slung to the ground, you know what I mean? And I'm just more comfortable in that space. I used to like to ride, and this is going to sound so cliche, the US 1 highway on a full moon night, just like
nothing cliche about that.
And I'm talking like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Just like put down because I used to have a real hard time sleeping, you know what I mean? And especially when I was in college. And, you know, I'm always up doing homework. I was averaging maybe 3-4 hours of sleep a night. But like to get on the bike, just blow out to the US 1 and ride the coast, and just, it's on a full moon night where you can just see that moon like reflecting off of that ocean, and that cold air is just filling up your lungs, and you're not even aware that you're breathing in and out. It's almost like it's just washing through your body. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about.
Man.
It's the same thing in free fall. You're not breathing. It's almost like air is just washing through you, like a fish, you know, just swims. It just happens, and you feel it, and you can see so much more when you're on the bike. Your perception of the world is so much more different when you're on the bike. You're so much more apt. You're not on the phone. You're not on the radio. You're not doing any crap. You're just paying attention to what's in front of you and what's around you. And that's what I love about motorcycle riding. I don't jump out of planes anymore, but getting on a bike and feeling that you know, that kind of baptism really does me a lot of good.
Yeah, James and I did a trip up the Central Coast not too long ago, and I tell you what, when it's snowing 16 inches here, I keep remembering about those trips out west, you know. And but man, I tell you, so Triumph, which Triumph do you have?
I have a Triumph. I have a 2012 Triumph Thruxton 900. I think that's Thruxton 900. Yeah, and like it's a powerful, fast little bike. I'm not even gonna say little bike. It's a powerful, fast bike. You know what I mean? It like I said, it sits up a little high for me, and it just feels a little bit squirrely. Like I don't have as much control over it. Like on my Harley, man, I could just press my knees. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of like riding a horse, you know, where you can just press your knee in one direction or the other, and the animal just reacts. Well, the steel horse reacts, you know. On my Harley, I can just press my knees. I don't get that same sort of feeling, you know, on the Triumph. And to tell you the truth, man, I just, you know, my wife fell in love with me when I was riding that motorcycle, and she used to call me the motorcycle guy when she talked to me about her friends. The motorcycle guy, that motorcycle guy comes back, you know what I mean? And then actually she reached out to me to go on our first date because she saw my motorcycle parked on the side of the road somewhere when she was driving, and it had such a distinctive look to it. Couldn't be anybody else's bike but mine, because it's like straight trash. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, oh, that's that motorcycle guy. And then we had exchanged emails or something, and she hit me up, man. So like, I love that bike. I love that bike. And, you know, sometimes it's trying to kill me, but I love that bike.
It's hard to describe for people that don't ride what we mean when we talk about being one with a bike and that feeling of being so connected that I'm thinking of turning left and the bike's with me. It's already, it's going there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And being so comfortable, you know, with the bike that sometimes you, like I said, you know, you just connected to something else. You know, you're connected to the bike, you're aware. I mean, you're hyper aware, but it becomes an extension of you. And you just, you know, now you're part of something else because you're just feeling it all around. Like when I talk about, again, that airflow, that relative wind, it becomes, you're just feeling just movement all around you. And to me, that's, I love that feeling, you know?
Yeah.
My
rides with Chris. Yeah. I do rides with Chris, and I used to listen to music, or I'd listen to like a book on tape or podcast. But I find myself now, I'll ride 12 hours in a day and not listen to anything but the hum of the engine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? All it is white noise. And it's soothing. It's soothing. It's so soothing. It's so soothing that you're like, man, I bet when I was a baby, I loved white noise. What baby doesn't love white noise and isn't soothed by white noise? How is that? It must be ingrained in our DNA. It has to be, because that's what I hear. I just hear white noise when I'm riding, and it's just one of the most calming things ever. And again, if you don't ride, and like, look, there is an increased risk of having an accident when you ride a motorcycle. Okay, there is. I mean, just by the nature, it's the nature of the beast. But when you ride and you really love it, you know what I'm talking about. You really do. And to try to explain it to somebody else, especially like, you know, a doctor that works in the ER, you're just an organ donor.
Well, those guys.
I didn't sign the card, so work harder.
Yeah. Oh man. No, I hear you though, man. You know, it's amazing you say about that being in the DNA thing. That's a beautiful description of that, because it's hard to capture in words what the clarity is that you get when you have just that white noise. You know, it's you, it's the bike, and your surroundings.
Now, do you ride with a full face?
I do ride with. I ride with a modular. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I started riding with a full face when I rode that Triumph across the country, but before that I always rode with just a peanut shell, you know, and I love that too. You know, if like in Pennsylvania, there's no helmet law. I'll take my helmet off. You know what I mean? Like it'll come off and I'll ride. I actually have a funny story about riding a motorcycle in Pennsylvania. I'm gonna lay it on. I was doing a practice leg of my documentary, because I filmed a documentary when I rode across, and I was going through Pennsylvania. I was almost out of gas, and it was the hottest weekend of 2016 that summer. It was like August. It was freaking blistering, and I had already run out of gas before, because it's a new bike. You know what I mean? And I misjudged things. And so I got caught pushing the bike during one leg, you know, the down leg of the trip. And then on the way back up, you know, I'm running low on gas, and I was in traffic, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to split lanes. And I started splitting lanes, and then people were moving over to block me. And I'm like, I'm not sitting in this traffic in this heat to just do this again. And so I cut over to the shoulder, and I started, you know, kind of motoring down the shoulder, and this truck tried to pull me off, you know, pull in front of me, and I zipped around him, and I made it to the gas station. And I'm talking like, when I pop the tank, you hear the psh. And then I'm in the middle of filling up my tank. Now, keep in mind, I'm riding a bright red Triumph Thruxton 900. I look like pretty much right now, minus maybe the beard. And I've got a sissy bar loaded up with camera gear on this cafe bike, right? And I'm filling it up, and this truck comes pulling up, and I knew it was the same truck. And this guy goes, hey, was that you splitting lanes? And I go, no.
No.
He didn't know what to say. He was like, well, I'm a cop. And I was like, okay. He goes, I'm going to write you a ticket. I said, okay. And he was so pissed that he didn't know what to do. He's like, I don't have my ticket book. I'm going to call somebody. I was like, well, you better hurry because I'm leaving.
Oh,
This
man.
guy was so fucking angry that he didn't know what to do with himself. And again, without knowing the entire situation, without knowing the entire story, not knowing like what had happened to me before and like what my ultimate goal was just not to get stranded on the side of the highway, you know, with this motorcycle and all this gear, like pushing uphill towards, you know, the gas station. And, you know, it was an emergency. I did what I had to do, but it was funny. It was funny. That's my Pennsylvania story.
He was just bitter that he couldn't lane split.
You know, I think that he was honestly like, I think he was upset about being in traffic. I think he really was. And then he was just so frustrated that he couldn't do anything to let it out, you know, that he got really pissed. He's like, you're lucky, motherfucker, and like drove away. I was like, all right, man, whatever. It was like I was the most innocent person in the altercation, I think, other than like having broke the law. If you're gonna write me a ticket, fine, write me a ticket, I'll take it. But he didn't have his ticket book, and that made him more mad. It's just funny. It's just funny. But
well, you get the PA again, man. You got to holler at me. Shoot, 2016. I remember that summer. It was blistering hot. I was on my HD going up to York, PA. Got stuck in some stop and go traffic. And I may or may not have ridden up the shoulder, you know, to get out of the heat.
Yeah, exactly, man. And people don't realize, like, there's no turning on the AC. No. You know, when you're on that bike and the engine's like just burning up your inner thighs, and you're like literally sitting in a puddle of your own fluids. You know what I mean? You're like, when I get off this bike, it's gonna look like I shit myself. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have liquid from my middle of my back all the way down to my knees on the inside. You know what I'm saying? And people do look at you weird. When I got to that gas station after pushing my bike, when I finally got to that gas station after pushing my bike that weekend, I walked in and they had one of those AC things that just blew cold air on you right at the door. I just stood I took off my shirt and just stood in the door. I didn't give a shit what anybody said because I got thug tattoos and I was a little bit bigger back then. And, you know, I was not having it. I was all hot and red and bothered. And nobody was going to say anything. So I just stood there for about 5 minutes, just letting that cold air blow on me. Like riding a motorcycle make you do kooky things sometimes. I stopped at a place in Arizona. Oh my God. Another just dying in the heat story. I stopped at a place in Arizona when I finally got there, and I was just laying in the shade outside the gas station on the sidewalk, just laying there. You know, bikes parked like 15, 20 feet away. I'm just laying there. And the gas station lady comes out smoking a cigarette, you know, the clerk, and she's like, there's no loitering here. I was like, I'm not loitering. I'm recovering from heat stroke. I was like, this is a medical emergency. Well, as long as you're not loitering. I was like, okay.
So in episode 4, welcome back from the brief little intermission. In episode 4, we were talking about my race that I had with a police officer that I did not know was a police officer. I thought it was somebody not allowing me to come back over into a lane. We got up to probably well, I'm not going to say on here. We were going really, really fast. And it was probably a good mile into this race that I realized it was a police officer. He had his lights on. It was an undercover Impala. But eventually pulled us over. The whole episode, in episode 4, you'll get the whole story. But it was in Arizona, and you know, this guy pulled me over, and you were talking about the cop at the gas station. It made me think of that. You know, he was so mad at you. You know, this guy was the same way. It's just absolutely beside himself. And he gets out of his car and he's wagging his finger and he's telling me that, you know, 20 miles per hour over the speed limit, you're going to jail. You know, how fast were you going? And I knew at that point he didn't know how fast we were going. So I just said 55, and he absolutely lost his shit. Now, I know that I thought you said your brother was a police officer in Arizona. Is he still out there?
for years out in Peoria, Arizona. So like he was a traffic cop. So like you guys talking about this, it's kind of funny. I'm like, that's my brother's stomping grounds. You know, it could have been him.
Oh, should have got his last name, brother. Next time I'll ask.
All right, so
Oh,
we're
my
back to
gosh.
part 2. We sort of ran out of time there with the first one, but we're just going to carry on with the conversation. I mean, so you got the Triumph, you've got the
Yeah,
Harley,
and I got the Harley.
and then
And
you
that's
got
it.
well, yeah, but you got the Nova
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
and the
Chevy,
Mustang.
the Chevy 2 and the Mustang. Yeah. The Chevy 2 Nova. You know, I tell people that there was a Chevy 2 until what, like 68, and that's when they started calling it just a Nova. You know, but yeah, I've got the 63 Chevy 2, and then my wife has a 1967 Ford Mustang GT.
Oh, so that's your wife's. Because I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
maybe, you were, a little AC/DC there because you had a Ford and a Chevy in the garage, because usually it's one or the other. So,
Look, I'm an equal opportunity automotive lover. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I've got a Triumph and a Harley. You know what I'm saying? I've got the Chevy and the Ford, and I've owned both in my past. I've also owned Jeeps before, you know.
Yep.
And then of course our daily driver, our Flashmobile, is a BMW X6, and I gotta say that's a boss fucking car, man. Like
yeah, my neighbor's got one across the street.
Dude, I tell you what, I pass trucks with chains on all the time, and I'm just in regular all-wheel drive. You know what I mean? The thing weighs 6,000 pounds. It's stable. It's a little bit of a beast. It doesn't drive like a regular BMW, I'm sure, but I freaking love it. I have become a fan. You know, so like as far as like our modern car, it's a very reliable and stable vehicle that, you know, is safe for Flash. As far as our personal like love automobiles, yeah, we've got the Nova and the Mustang, yeah.
Oh yeah. So you got the Nova all torn apart though right now. The engine?
Actually, she's all reassembled. I'm having a fuel pump issue right now, or a fuel pressure issue. I think that the way that my Chevy 2 is set up, I ended up having to install the fuel pump in a location that really isn't the best for drawing the fuel and getting it out to the engine. I'm getting a little bit of loss of power and stuff like that. But I did replace the head gasket, and I also at the same time, which was stupid, and I don't recommend this to anybody, at the same time I replaced the head gaskets, I also decided to install an EFI.
Oh.
And I pulled the Holley double pumper 750 out, and I put in a Holley Sniper.
I have that in my Camaro. I love it. I love it.
One problem at a time, boys.
Yeah, exactly. One problem at a time. And so I had a hell of a time getting her to even start, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to troubleshoot so many different angles. And believe me, I didn't mess with the sniper system. I was like, I'm not going to get into this unless I can actually get this thing to run. And then I was having some timing issues. I have some valve lash issues. I threw a couple of push rods somehow along with freaking all the rockers underneath the valve covers one time. I'm like, what the hell? It was like my engine blew up. I don't know what happened. And so, you know, hard lessons learned. I was at it for about a month. And then I finally got her running, even got her down to our local, mountain auto place where I get all my parts from, or try to get all my parts from. You know, showed her off to those guys. Like, look, I don't always know what I'm talking about, but I know what I'm doing. You know,
Famous last words right there.
Yeah, and then of course, you know, I really start having this fuel pump issue, and I'm like, is it the pump? Is it the fuel filters? I'm kind of looking at some different options for, you know, how to manage, you know, that fuel pressure, or maybe relocating the fuel pump. But
Now,
but yeah,
I got the 69 Camaro with the Sniper. We had to put 2 pumps into it. So we have a pump up in the front and a pump in the back.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were hitting the accelerator with a single pump, were you getting a high-pitched whistle and a loss of power?
I don't get a loss of power, but I get the high-pitched whistle, and that's the air intake. So,
yeah,
100%, you know, transparency. I did not put it in.
Yeah.
James can handle a screwdriver and not too much past that.
Oh, okay.
I can do some minor stuff on a car, but when it came to putting the EFI in, we already had the car in the shop because they did the full restore on it from the frame up. But
Nice.
I figured while it's in there, I'll have them do it because they got to drop the sensors into the, you know, the headers and all that. And it was the second pump. When I took it out the first time, I was asking him, I was like, where's that high pitch? I mean, I don't have a turbo on this thing. Why is it making this sound? And he said, no, it's just the air intake because it's sucking so much air. You get that high pitch. Yeah. So no, I get that, but I don't have a lot of power.
But then I get the high pitch, but then I don't have any power. All of a sudden, especially in first gear, it'll die down. And then as even if it stays alive, it'll kind of pick back up. And then I can bring it up to regular RPMs, regular speed. But then when I shift again, it'll die down until it picks up again. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? It's like when I first hit that accelerator, there's no fuel there to back up the request.
You need the second pump. Yeah, it has to have 50 pounds, I think, minimum. So the original pump was for 5 pounds, and we ended up, when I bought the system from Holly, I ended up getting the complete system from them, where it had all of the fuel pumps, all of the lines, everything.
See, I did that, but it only came with a single fuel pump.
Yeah, no, we have 2 on mine.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into that then. Anyway, but yeah, that's the Nova. That's what's been going on with the Nova, and she's a sleeper, you know, built for probably the quarter-mile track. And I didn't do a ground-up rebuild on it. I'm pretty good at buying cars off the internet. You know what I mean? Like I research, I ask a lot of questions. I buy it now. Like I take it now.
Impulse buy.
Yeah, and then when I get them, I sort them all out. With the Nova was actually my first ever internet, like straight up purchase from like, it was eBay. And I had it shipped to my brother's house out in Phoenix. He's a cop, and, you know, had him look into it, make sure it was, because I couldn't believe what a deal I got on. And I was like, oh my God, this thing's amazing. And then so my brother like checked it out and made sure everything was all good to go. And then I went and picked it up with my 2 sons, and we drove it out to California together. And that was a lot of fun. It was a great little road trip for me and my 2 oldest boys. So
nice. How old are they?
They're 23 and 20.
Oh, so you're restarting. You're going back to ground zero, my friend.
You know, I wouldn't call it ground zero, because I'm coming back with a lot of salt, a lot of experience. So I'm a lot more patient than I was when I was younger. I'm a lot less broke than I was when I was younger. I'm a lot less stressed about, you know, is this the right thing for me, than when I was younger. And you know, God bless my sons, you know what I mean? I really cut my teeth on those dudes, especially my oldest, man. That guy's one of the most fucking awesome individuals I've ever met for what I put him through. Because I didn't know shit about being a parent, man. And then my youngest too, man. Like I mean, they turned into great men, and it's a tribute to their mom too. So like with this, you know, I'm coming at it with a lot different angle and even a different attitude. I'm not the same guy that I was when I was 23, that's for sure. So I'm enjoying it more. Yeah. You know, I every day of this past year, with the exception of this weekend where it was the first time I left, I've been with my son, and I never had that for that long with my older 2 boys. You know what I mean? I never got to see the first steps. I never heard the first words. Well, with my oldest I did, because I was at SOMC, but you know, I didn't get to see a lot of that stuff that you know, dads that are home every night see. And I've been here every day, like working with this guy and like, awesome. And like hanging out with him. And you know, I've been working from home, and my wife's been working from home. And like when I'm working, she's with him. When she's working, I'm with him. And we kind of share that load. And I've learned to appreciate how hard it is just to be a mom. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing half the chasing and I'm exhausted. She does all the feeding. And I'm like, and she's exhausted, you know, and that's new for me too. So, you know, being in the relationship that I am now, in the place that I am now mentally and stuff like that, it's such a more rewarding experience to focus on what really matters in my life. And then everything else is just static. You know what I mean? You know, like it's one of the greatest blessings I've ever been aware of. You know what I mean? I've been, you know, there are plenty of blessings in my life that maybe just went right over my head, and I didn't acknowledge them. But this is one of those that I know that what I've got is a good thing, and I know I want it to continue. And fuck, man, I just do my best every day to not screw it up. You know what I mean? Like where before I was like, fuck it all, you know, I didn't care. I was just a different guy back then. You know, I had a different attitude. It was a very cavalier and selfish attitude. And I think that in a lot of ways I've acknowledged that, and I like the man that I'm trying to be a lot more. Is that a weird thing to say?
Nope,
No,
not at all.
Yeah, man. I think that there's like, for guys especially, there's three dudes inside of one body. There's the guy that you are, there's the guy that you want to be, and then there's that naysayer motherfucker that hates you both. You know what I mean? And you're like, look, man, I just want to be this guy that's like this amazing guy, and here's how my imagination has cooked this guy up. And then there's that dick that's like, no. I know you. I know who you are. I know where you've been. I know what you've done. You know, he's the guy that knows all your dark secrets, and he's that voice in your head that keeps you from pursuing something that could be potentially life-changing and amazing. You know what I mean? So like for me, I just stopped giving into that other thing, and like said, hey man, like I kind of like that dude that I want to be. Why don't I just do that? So yeah.
Self-doubt's it's a mother, man. And a lot of guys, the other thing too about men is, you know, especially I'm a little older than you guys, but you know, men suffer from the disease called alone. Like we don't express ourselves well, right? We take a motorcycle.
I'm like a blubbery baby now.
Right? It happened. I got a 3-year-old grandson. My wife and I were sitting there the other day, and my wife looked over. We're watching this thing, and my grandson says, "Oh, Papa, you're the best." Big old tear. Boop, got me. Right?
Yeah.
And my wife goes, hey, nobody saw, nobody's gonna know, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, you never think it's gonna happen, but when it does, you realize how much you've missed by suppressing that. And it's like, dudes, just get into it.
Well, you know, when I was geographically dislocated from my sons after my divorce, and some things happened, and I didn't get to see them for a long time because of my own behavior. Like, and it wasn't because it wasn't anything big. It was just that they didn't want to see me until I got my shit together. And I kind of had to start to reevaluate my relationship with my sons and like the kind of person that I wanted to be for them. And I wasn't always that guy, but I started getting very emotional at some point when I realized how fragile, you know, that relationship could be, and that there are consequences for maybe your emotional outbursts, you know, especially when it comes to kids. And you know, I did a lot to try to repair those relationships. Maybe I went too far as like doting goes, and in some ways, but in other ways, you know, I really made a concentrated effort to repair the relationship between me and my sons, you know, and because we were geographically dislocated, and I didn't want to not have them be in my lives. And when you talk about that moment, you know, that teary moment, my son was out here this past summer, my 20-year-old, and his first time he met his little brother, you know, this little baby, and you know, Flash is just on the cusp of like being able to push his chest up off the ground, but he hasn't really done it yet. And so there's my son on the floor, basically doing a push-up with Flash, and he's patting his hand. I posted it on Instagram, but you know, basically my 20-year-old pushes himself up, and then my, you know, Flash pushes himself up, and you know, and they look at each. Fuck, man, I couldn't run out of the room fast enough. I was tripping all over myself because I'm filming, but then I got so choked up that like tears instantly sprung to my eyes, because here's these, you know, my two boys kind of, you know, bonding, and it was a really great experience for me, you know, and I don't know if it affected them the same way. I absolutely certainly did not, But those moments, I live for moments like that now. I want more of those moments where I can be overwhelmed with like just positive emotion and joy. Joy is what it is.
That's
You know,
right.
and we don't all let ourselves experience joy, and I don't know why not. I don't know why not.
Yeah, back to the riding the motorcycles again. Joy.
Yeah, and riding motorcycles to some extent does bring us pleasure, but it's not joy.
No.
It's not that same thing. And it's not the same thing, because that's a solitary meditative experience. That's you connecting with the world around you in your way. That's you and your spouse can be on the back of the motorcycle with you too, you know what I mean? But you're still kind of solitary. And I've taken my wife on the back of the motorcycle, and we have great rides, but like, those really good rides are the ones where you're not worried about laying down the bike because your wife's on the back or something like that. You're just connected to something else. So that joy is different. For me, it's a different sort of experience. I am in love with my family. You know what I mean? And it's something that I've let myself do. I've let myself love my family, where before maybe I kept them at a distance. You know what I mean? Because I thought I was going to fucking die any second. You know what I mean? As long as the paperwork's all sorted out, they don't need me anyway. I'll just whatever. You know what? I didn't see myself as even a capable adult. You know what I'm saying? For me, it was just about making sure everything was financially squared away and doing the best I could to not F them up. It wasn't about connecting emotionally. It wasn't about, enjoying our lives together. It was about just doing the best I could to not fuck up. And when you're living your life to just not fuck up, it seems like it's like when you stare at the tree on the bike.
Yeah. You're gonna hit it.
You're going right there.
So in a lot of ways there are parallels, riding the bike and learning to just enjoy the ride and give yourself over to it, and then it's the same thing with family, give yourself over to it, enjoy it. That's what you got into it for. A lot of people like to burden themselves with all of the things, all of the negative that can come with a relationship, and then forget about all of the good things. And then that becomes the predominant sort of force in your life, is this conflict or whatever, instead of focusing on the things that really matter. So for me, I mean, like right now I'm working for myself, which technically means I'm unemployed because I don't pay me that much. so
yeah, I mean, you have Monkey Fist Films or production. Now, is this the documentary that you did with the Triumph, is this a part of that?
Yeah, so that's how Monkey Fist Films started, was, it's all about just getting a little anchor into the industry, you know what I mean? And a monkey fist is an anchor you tie into the end of a rope, and in climbing, it's a flexible anchor you can wedge into a crack or something like that and use. And so I like the idea of like that flexibility and still being able to anchor yourself somewhere and create a handhold where maybe there wasn't one, or create some security where there was. So that's the whole idea behind Monkey Fist, and then the idea of like just chasing our own stories that we're interested in. And it did start with my documentary. And I'll tell you what, I had met my wife before the documentary, and my life was different. Her life was different, and everything was casual about our relationship, if not professional. And we only had met a handful of times, but there was definitely an energy between the two of us. And then by the time that, I went out to the East Coast and then, filmed, and, my life changed drastically. And then I decided to do this ride to kind of soul search. By the time I got back, she was in a very similar place as me. Like our lives had been like converging. And then we started dating, and things just kicked off very quickly. And she, she really is a positive and wonderful force in my life. And we run our production company together. So when we talk about our projects, it did kick off with that motorcycle documentary, but then it also turned into Well, well, what other interesting stories can we tell? Well, her family owns a 25,000 square foot marijuana grow and dispensary, and they're dealing with the taxes and all of the problems that come with like this brand new industry that's changing the world, supposedly, or changing. I mean, it's definitely generating a lot of revenue, you know what I mean, for the government at least. So like it was an opportunity to really do something that nobody else has done, which is go behind the scenes of a major marijuana operation and look at how it's being run, look at how things are happening, look at, like what are the obstacles that this family owned and operated business faces, how are they overcoming them? And it's not all it's not all smoking weed and good times, man. It's like real business and it's real money, and it's in the amounts that they're talking about. We get into the billions of dollars of taxes, that are paid to, in 1.03 to California in 2019, I believe it was. So we gathered all of the footage over a few years. It started with just me with a camera filming, my in-laws talking about stuff, and then my wife grabbed the camera and she started being able, I mean, she's a little bit more of a fly on the wall, nobody, she's part of the business, so of course they're going to be comfortable talking business in front of somebody that's part of the business. So my wife took over the camera, and she turned out to be she's already an artist, so like she's really gifted with the visual storytelling. And then we brought in a co-producer and friend, Tony Bartolini, who's also a cinematographer and camera operator, and he brought a whole other dimension, but with 4K footage and like beautiful imagery and really helping to produce the whole thing. And meanwhile, my wife and Tony are doing this whole thing. I'm in Connecticut doing Forest and Fire. So I've got the easiest job in the world. I'm like, what do you need? I'll arrange some rentals. Yeah, I'll get Tony the hotel. I became like more like the line supervisor, but like still like we produced it, it was three people. It was just the three of us. And we brought in Gabe Schiller, a sound guy, for one day, and he did an amazing job. But like, that was it. It was just the three of us producing what ultimately became this hour or 55-minute documentary. And we've just like put the final touches on things. There might be a couple of little tweaks that we want to do right now. And it's like, where do we take it now? And that's where we are right now. And we're a little behind the power curve. I think just with things being the way they are. And of course, I'm very particular. And my wife is very particular. It's hard to release something that's about you and your family. And that applies to both documentaries. I have a really hard time with the veteran documentary because I do expose a lot of my personal life while I was in the military. And it's nothing that I haven't talked about before, but like watching me talk about that stuff, I want to punch me in the face. You know what I mean? Like, while I'm watching it, it's hard to watch yourself on camera go through something, you know what I mean? And go through, this kind of evolution where you're like, oh my God, like this guy's, having a hard time. So yeah, that's what's next.
Is the motorcycle documentary out yet?
Not yet. And that's the one I'm talking about when I talk about the
veteran one. Okay.
Documentary. Yeah, because I interviewed veterans as I crossed the country.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure all of our listeners will want to see that one. So
yeah, and it's, I think right now, I think the working title initially was the American Walkabout, but it kind of turned into the Transition Project. And again, it's been a few years in the editing, and it's time, two, it's contract. I had to really fight to be able to even release anything that had me in it without the approval of my producers at Forged and Fire. So like, these are things that had to be worked out in contract after I had already filmed all of the principal photography and stuff. And then like hiring an editor. I hired an editor to edit, and then she put together a pretty good edit, but then I'm watching it, I'm like, man, this is an hour and 58 minutes, and I'm a military guy and I'm listening to this documentary and I'm watching the documentary and while I just couldn't. So I was like, okay, great job. We got a great start. And then I ended up buying my own editing equipment and got everything that I needed to really do it, and then chopped it down to like 58 minutes. And I still have work to do on it, and I still have interesting characters. And then it gets to a point like, how do I edit this guy's hour and 42-minute interview when he's telling me about extortion 17 for 27 of those minutes? And recovering the casualties from extortion 17. How do I edit that? How do I go in and say, oh, this bit of information is more important than this bit of information, and this should be in my documentary and this shouldn't? For me as a veteran, I hate it when people edit the things that I say and chop it up, and then everything gets put out of context.
Yeah.
And so I'm hyper aware of the reputations of the people that I interview, and what kind of how I'm cutting up those interviews. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to denigrate or take away from anything that they said. So I'm like, maybe I should just post the individual interviews in whole, on YouTube. So again, it's like, how do I put it out, and how do I put it out in the best possible way that really illustrates, the gravity of that trip and what these veterans had to say about transitioning out of the military. I don't want to, when Antonio Ruiz is talking about jumping into Panama and going through the trauma of like finding his homie shot in the head and like, doing medical treatment, and then later on going to prison, for some shit that he was doing as a security guard. I mean, like, how do you edit that guy's very emotional and very, very intricate and detailed life into like a documentary that's about me trying to come to terms with my own transition? Those are the issues that I'm running into, and my own integrity won't let me, like, I don't know. I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
No, I get an idea. I don't envy you in the position that you're in, because each one of those, I mean, that's a 2-3 hour, documentary just in each one of those stories.
Well,
I mean, all of the other stories that go involved with it,
there's so many layers to even the whole trip. It took me 2 weeks. I was on Facebook every night. I was doing videos on my phone. So like the media is all crossed over, and it's not, so there's some footage that's HD, no problem, 1080p HD, and then there's other stuff that's all choppy and grainy. And when you talk about doing a solo documentary and it's your first one, man, I don't want it to look amateur. You know what I mean? I know what I'm trying to get out there. I know I can put out a professional product, but I think for all of the logistics and everything that I was doing, I have to do it the right way. You know what I mean? It wasn't a student film. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is a documentary, that can really, I think, in my mind, turn into something else. And it's something that I would like to continue. I would like to continue to interview veterans. I would like to continue to travel to the places that they live and where they reside, and talk to them about their lives and their transitions and what's great for them and what it's like to be in their community, what they expect from their futures. You know what I mean? Like, I like talking about those things because it also ignites a fire in them. When you start talking about your expectations for yourself and then for your family and your community, you're like, well, how come I'm not achieving those now? You know what I mean? So for me, that's what it came. How come I'm not achieving all of these things that I'm talking about that I want? You know what I mean? What's blocking me from doing that stuff? Well, sometimes just talking about your expectations with a veteran or how things are going gets them moving in the right direction. I told Andy Stumpf on his podcast that I thought the military was doing an F- with transition. You know what I mean? And I've thought that for a long time.
Years.
And I've thought it since my dad transitioned out of the military, and I've never gotten a follow-up phone call from anybody to say, in any official capacity whatsoever, to say, hey, how's it going? How's it going, man? Did you find that job that we told you about at your 3-day out processing? You know, it's like, you know, so and then you know, so it's definitely something that is poorly addressed in our society.
Yeah, with the
Yeah,
number
especially
of
from the PTSD standpoint, you know, they know who has it.
It's
and
not just
it's in our
PTSD.
VA records. There's no follow up. There's no. I like what you've done. Sort of segue into your Instagram with your motivational Mondays.
Yeah.
And good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what? That's just something that I started. We don't all have PTSD. We're not all, you know, I hate that. I hate, and I know me and there's a bunch of other guys that feel the same way. I hate this broken soldier sort of mentality. Okay, great. I have borderline personality disorder. That didn't come from the military. That came from my parents. You know what I mean? That came from a totally different place. Blame it on something else. You know what I mean? Did I get into a career field that fed my impulses? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I did. And I enjoyed the shit out of it, you know? After I got out, you know what I mean? Those impulses, they weren't fed anymore. And that's where I had to learn more about myself. And that's where more veterans need to kind of learn about themselves and be open to the idea of like, hey man, like you can't do it all yourself all the time. You can't. And if you think you can, then you're going to find yourself on a lonely island. But the mental health Mondays is it's about in general, like attitude. It's not just about your mental health. It's about how's your attitude today, you know, like, are you in a bad mood? Are you a good mood? I mean, what would it take to like just switch gears, you know, because there are days that I wake up and I'm just freaking grumpy from the get-go, you know, and, you know, those things can have an overriding effect on your day and on your personal life. So, you know, that's just kind of what it's all about. You know, I think that people nowadays have a tendency to really get sucked into a negative space, and it's unnecessary.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
How
sad
was
too.
your-
Some people like living there, you know.
Yeah, man.
I don't know why, but they do. I think that, you know, we were talking about men suffer from the disease called alone. I think a lot of times veterans do as well. And with the number of suicides, the alarming number of suicides, you know,
Especially in the male population.
right? It's time to talk to each other. It's time to talk to somebody, and it's time to make sure that their voice is heard. It's a crowd it reminds me of, I was in college. We had a guy who was little school All-American. He gets his leg broke. Long story short, he was a cast off. Like, you know, like, we can't use you anymore, so you're no good to me anymore. And that's kind of how the military is. It's like, hey, while you were in and you served a purpose, that's great. You know, good men go do bad things so people can sleep at night. And then when you get out, it's like, yeah, we're done with you, man.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That's where the American Legion, your VFWs and stuff like that were created to kind of fill that gap. But for some reason, there became like an ill repute. You know what I mean? There became a negative, you know, this kind of, I don't know, this reputation for like being a place where freaking barflies go to trade war stories and just kind of being kind of these seedy places. And I don't know how that came about or whatever, but the only people that care about veterans are veterans, you know what I mean? And veterans' families, you know, everybody else is lip service. And, you know, all these freaking, okay. Yeah. Everybody else, I think that if you go to the Warrior Games and you look in the stands, and I told somebody else this, you know what I mean? You're going to see what America really thinks of veterans and veteran sacrifices, and it's almost insulting. So I love our veterans, because I'm one of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are my brothers and sisters in arms, and whether we chewed the same dirt and spilled blood in the same places or whatever, or trained or know the same people, the fact that the warrior spirit connects us is there. And those are the people that I care about. You know what I mean? Even the ones that like went to jail and did stupid shit. You know what I mean? I wrote a letter of, I wrote a letter for my homie who was on trial for murder out in Vegas. You know what I mean? Like a character reference. And I could only speak to his character, you know what I mean? From when I knew him,
Right.
you know what I mean? But that's what I did, because that's what I could do for him. I couldn't do anything else for him. And you know what, man? I was really fucking emotionally broke up about it. I felt at fault, like I failed him as his team leader, and that's how he got where he was. You know what I mean? And I've reached out to him since then. He was what do you want to call it? He was found not guilty, or the trial was thrown out, or whatever. I mean, he's out and free now, but yeah, you know, I've reached out to him to like reconnect, and you know, he hasn't reached back, and you know, maybe that's it. You know, he's living a different lifestyle or whatever, but like, you know, I still have a connection to those guys, and I still have a love for somebody like that. Like you, yeah, you fucked up, but here's what I knew about you, and here's what I think of you, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was all love, man. I love that mother. I called him Mijo. I love that motherfucker. You know what I mean? And the way that we went separate ways, he ended up getting a medical discharge, and I was really hard on him at the end. He was wrapped up in a pretty big RICO case, you know, out in whatever. But anyway, I wrote him that letter, just the character reference, and it was all about like, you know, how he was as a ranger, you know what I mean? And that's all I could really attest to. And we chatted a little bit back and forth on email, I think, when he was in jail, and really needed to hear from somebody.
Yeah.
And then since, I haven't heard from him, and I don't know why. I hope it's not because he feels like he can't talk to me about what's going on, and I hope it's not because he feels like he got one over on me either, you know what I mean? But you know, I just wrote what was in my heart, and like, everybody stumbles, everybody falls, you know, and how do we get back up? Well, sometimes you need a hand. So, you know, that's how I kind of engaged on it. I didn't know if he was guilty. I don't know if he was innocent. That wasn't my job to determine. I just wrote what I knew about the guy. And it wasn't bad stuff. It was good stuff. He was a good man, you know. So when I knew him. So, but you know, things can take a turn. You know, you could be a bad man and take a turn for the better. You know what I mean? What's up, my dude? You okay? But anyway, that's kind of the moral of that story.
Well, I think everybody can definitely benefit from knowing somebody out there gives a shit. And
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, you know, pride goeth before the fool. And a lot of times pride, you know, it's like, I'm too proud to call you and say, thanks, Will, for writing that letter for me.
It's not even about that, man. I would just really like to see the guy and say, hey, man.
No, he's doing okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about thank yous or anything. Like, dude, I wish we had stayed in contact before. You know what I mean? We didn't have Facebook back then. We didn't have all of this stuff, you know, and even your phone number changed more often. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us. It was phenomenal getting a chance to cover so many topics with you. Really appreciate your time and being gracious with your time and putting up with James's editing, you know, technique where he just shuts the thing off when he wants to make a cut.
All right. You know what, man? It's okay. I understand. You got to do what you have to do. You know what I mean? And like I said, you know, like I said before, you know, believing in yourself and what you could do with your own imagination, your own resources is a lot of times very empowering. You know what I mean? So
I definitely want to say thank you. And just a couple quick things. Your time with the PJs, were you with Scott Morrison? Do you know him?
Man, I don't know. I to be honest, I don't remember working with a Morrison when I was at any of the units that I was at. You know, not for any sustained period of time. I could have jumped with them one place. I could have done a course of instruction with them another. There are PJs that I remember. I very inaccurately on a different podcast said that a PJ had passed away and he hadn't, and I had him mixed up with another guy, and I feel like such a fucking douchebag about it. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God. I said, God rest his soul. And he's like alive and well in Arizona. You know, like,
Hey,
like
the fuck?
as I was like, you know, wrapping up this interview, I was like, holy shit, man. Did I say that guy was dead? You know, like, fuck. Well, I'm the biggest dick alive, you know, like, so, you know, I think that
only 3 dudes that were in the military could actually laugh about you saying somebody was dead. Is that what's that say about us, man? We're just wrong.
I'm not laughing about it.
No,
you know,
I'm laughing at you.
Yeah.
Saying that dude was dead.
I feel like such a dick about it. You know what I mean? You know, and people are gonna be like, oh my God, you're such a freaking dumbass. And why the hell? And aren't you keeping up with things? And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, I can't keep up with everything. I'm doing the best I can. You know.
No, I'm just thinking of it from the position of being the guy. So if it was me and you that served, and you had said, "God rest, you know, James's soul," I'd be like, "Hey, that motherfucker just killed me."
yeah, like, oh fuck, dude, I feel so bad about it. But hopefully,
I'd have been just happy he remembered me.
huh?
You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, well, I ain't dead, but thanks for calling me out, bro.
That's not true.
At least you remember my name.
There are plenty of guys that are like, fuck that guy, Wil Willis. What a freaking douchebag. Yeah, and I don't know if this particular guy is one of them, but I hope not. I really respect the hell out of the guy. I said really nice things after I said God rest him. You know what I mean? I said really nice things that I would have said to his face too. I think I even told him to his face that I respected him at one point. But you know, I mean, it's just the ebb and flow of things. It's just how, you know,
Exactly.
And I do want to say, you know, what the listeners didn't hear is when we first kicked this off and it was just me and you on the call, you know, I'm being James, you know, he's getting straight to the point of, you know, I want to make sure that the podcast is going great. And you'd actually stopped me and said, "Hey man, how was your day?" And to me, that speaks to your character of who you are. And it really touched me. I mean, to the point where I'm making sure that I make a mention of it now. You know, that's one of the things how was your day today?
Yeah. My day today was amazing. I mean, I got home late last night from the airport, and you know, I got to spend the morning with my wife and my son. And you know, I did a podcast before this podcast, so I had actually lined up, you know, a few podcasts to do this week, and in the hopes of, you know, having different news, you know. But you know, we got what we got. I'm a little behind the power curve, and hopefully
we won't keep you any longer. So
yeah.
We appreciate your time. Anytime that you want to get back on here, talk about, you know, the cars, talk about the bikes, talk about bourbon, cigars, whatever.
Yeah, man, I love talking to you guys today about the veteran stuff. I love talking about the motorcycles and the cars and stuff. I really enjoyed our conversation. And you know, I know it's skewed a little spiritual, but I'm flighty like that. I go all over the place, you know.
You're good.
That's a fuel stop chat, man. That's how it works.
That's how it is, yeah.
I hope that you guys had a good time and you enjoyed yourselves as well.
Fucking outstanding.
Absolutely.
All right, cool, guys.
Thanks so much. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
All right, later on.
All right, later. Rider out.
Rider out.
I don't know what that means.
That's how we end our call. That's why Chris just clicked off. He's like, "Fuck it, I'm out." Boom.
Whiskey out.